Well, we're in trouble now. Carolyn is furious. She's had enough. So I'm going to get into that. I mean, pretty quick here, but I wanted to show you something real quick. The other day I told you that the ditch by the street here collects a lot of leaves when it comes down the hill. Water accumulates at my culvert because the leaves are built up. So what happens is the culvert up the hill gets clogged up with leaves and it breaks loose. The leaves come running down to my culvert, breaks loose, and then all of a sudden a big gush of water comes running down, and you could see the path it takes. It cuts a ditch right here. It runs straight to the well, and then the well absorbs all that dirty water coming there from the ditch. So I have a French drain that goes all the way around it. Of course there's leaves on it, but it's just rocks, and then there's a pipe underneath the rocks with holes in it, and that pipe carries it down the hill away from the well. But there's so much water that comes by that it overwhelms the French drain, goes right down into the well. So I'm trying very hard to accommodate that problem. So I dug a pre-ditch, and hopefully that'll catch some of the water. It's not very deep, but at least I can watch it, because we got this big storm coming tonight, and I can watch the water to see if this takes any of the water away. If it does, then I'll make another French drain here. That way I have two that will keep that water from rushing in to that well. It's just like floodwaters that come through there. Well, let's see how much that absorbs, and if it does, then I can work on that a little bit more. Like I said, Carolyn is pretty furious. I watched a video today, and he says, "Why are humans stupid?" Now this guy's some sort of psychiatrist or something, and he was explaining that humans are stupid because they see something educational, maybe PBS or a YouTube video, or they read a book, and all of a sudden now they believe they're experts. So they jump in with everything they got with only half the information. They don't get any experience, and then they're overwhelmed, things go wrong. There's a thing called Kruger-Dunning effect. Two scientists back, I think in the 50s, talked about this. Their name was Kruger and Dunning. Don't quote me, I may not be even saying it right, I don't remember. Their idea is that people have very little knowledge of a subject, know everything. And they will tell you on a survey paper, if you give them a paper, and you talk about raising chickens. They've never raised chickens, but they've read a book on chickens, and they'll say that they know everything about raising chickens. Yet a guy who's raising chickens, has done it for 15 years, will mark himself lower about having the knowledge of raising chickens because he knows what he doesn't know. He knows there's things he doesn't know about chickens. So the more experience you have, the less you have confidence in your experience. The less experience you have, the more confidence you have in your experience. Carolyn and I have been living off grid for a couple of years now, 3 years, and prior to that we traveled the country in a little camper. We never hooked up to electric except when we were at family's house, and one time we went to a state park here in Missouri. They had electric. So we've got quite a bit of experience living off our own electricity, generators, batteries. Quite a bit of experience now with solar panels, the well. You know, every day I learn something new that I need to do with the well I just showed you. But people come in to this channel and they tell me to do things that they have no experience with. The one that I get so aggravated about, I shouldn't, but I do, is people will non-stop, just like a constant drumbeat, tell me I need goats. They'll help you keep the weeds down, and then you get milk from them. And my reply is always, what do you do with them in the winter? Because in the winter, there's nothing for them to eat, so you gotta buy food, so that's a cost. Is that cost worth the goat milk? And the answer is no, it's not worth it. First of all, we don't drink that much milk. We get a lot of our vitamin D from the sun, and then of course you get vitamin D from being on a carnivore diet, so it's not like we need a lot of vitamin D. We just don't drink milk. So I don't see the point in goat milk, but if that was important to us, is it really worth feeding goats through the winter for goat milk? So normally when people tell me to get goats to keep the weeds down, I always say, what do I do with them for the winter? This is after they say get milk. And they'll say, well, butcher them in the fall. Well, then how do you get milk from them? You gotta have a mother who had a baby. You got to get the thing pregnant. She's got to have a baby, and then she can have milk. So this is already longer than the fall, butchering it in the fall. They don't understand the whole thing. The thing is I've owned goats. I don't like them. They're mean. Well, they're not mean. They're actually kind of nice. But if you train them, they're nice. If you don't train them, they're mean. We had 2 females, and one of them was nicer than the other, because we got the one female a little bit younger than the other one. She was still skittish, but in the end, you could pet her. But the other mother, oh my goodness, she was terrible. You'd have to hold her to try to get milk, and she'd come up with her head and just bop your head. It was terrible. And then when you actually have the kid, and you try to wean the kid off the mother, oh, the mother just goes ballistic. She can't stand it. So no, there's just nothing about goats I liked. And the meat isn't all that great. I mean, it's okay. I mean, if there's nothing else to eat, that's fine, sure. But my wife at the time and my daughter didn't like it, so it wasn't even worth having them. So then they always reference this particular YouTuber. Well, this YouTuber used to have goats. He loved them. And the key is, used to have goats. I watched this YouTuber. He got rid of them. And my suspicions is they're a lot of work. These people come in with half information thinking they know everything. Carolyn and I have been discussing regularly about getting a camper to park it right here, because this is a little spot that I've cleared out. And I think I need to take out a couple more trees and a couple more twigs here, and we could get a little Scotty camper or something very small to put here. Now, they make pretty small campers, single axle campers, and they're not that expensive. Now, I intend to get a used one. One of the things that I've got so many complaints about is campers are notorious for leaking. Yeah, they're notorious for leaking. That's why you got to maintain them. I mean, that's just kind of the way the things go. Anytime I talk about something new on this channel, people come in with all kinds of opinions. Now, I know I'm on YouTube and the opinions are just part of the job. I got to deal with everybody's opinions. But I feel like I try to educate. I don't try to ask for opinions. Again, I'm not criticizing about the opinions. It does get frustrating after a while when you've explained it a million times and people still think you're wrong. Carolyn and I were going to get pigs, and we really considered it. We planned it all out. We figured out how much it was going to cost. We were going to get 2 of them. One of them was going to go to my mother. There was just a lot that we had planned on here. And then we decided, you know what? We don't know everything about pigs, and it would be pretty devastating if one got loose. Carolyn was reading on Facebook in the local town down the hill that somebody's pig got loose, and she thought, oh, that would be terrible if we lost a pig. We have all these chickens, and occasionally a chicken gets loose. At least they stay close to home, but a pig, that's how we get feral pigs, is they get loose and then they all of a sudden start multiplying, and then you got this big epidemic of feral pigs everywhere. So we decided not to get it. Well, oh my gosh, you gotta get pigs, you gotta get pigs. Well, what we said is we wanted to be experts in chickens. And we still have problems with chickens. I mean, just recently the dog got into our chicken coop and we had to solve that problem, and they killed 9 chickens. And the more experience we get with chickens, the more we realize we don't know everything there is to know about chickens. So we start talking about this camper, and it's shocking to me how many people absolutely hate the idea of a camper. We live in a tiny house, and my father specifically said that he would like to come visit. It's a 1,000-mile trip for him. Either he has to go into a hotel room when he gets here, or he stays in a tiny house. If he wants to go in a hotel room, fine, he can go in a hotel room, and heck, I'll even offer to pay for it, no big deal. It's my obligation of course, he's not gonna let me pay for it. Oh no, that's my, it would be one big argument after another. Who's doing what? I'll take you over the hotel room. No, I'll drive. And a thought came to me and Carolyn that we'll get this camper. No, you cannot get a camper. That's a terrible idea. And we have heard everything there is underneath the sun about how terrible of an idea this is. Don't get me wrong, there are folks who actually agree with this idea. Just got a comment just a few minutes ago that said basically you get a visitor, what, maybe once a year, I doubt if we'll get that much. So now you have this room that you have to maintain and keep warm and keep cool all year round, so this visitor can come once a year. But a lot of people think that I need to add on to the tiny house. And I've made video after video, at least 3 or 4 now, explaining we're not going to add on to a tiny house because that defeats the purpose of a tiny house. Minimalization. So every time I've spoken about the camper, people have come up with ideas that I just don't even understand. One person said, no, you need a school bus. We're getting a school bus. We're going to travel the country. You need to get a school bus. A school bus isn't going to fit here. Now, we could get one of those short bus things, but those are, what, $5,000, $6,000? Maybe $10,000 for one that runs. We would have to actually go in and put a bed into it, take all the seats out. We would have to do a lot of work to make it a livable space. Another person said, a pop-up camper. You don't want a camper, you want a pop-up camper. They literally said because campers leak. Well, we lived in a pop-up camper for a year, traveling the country. You can go back to my early videos, you'll see that's how we travel, in a pop-up. The problem with the pop-up is it's got canvas. The canvas rots, it molds. Of course, yeah, you can lower it, but Carolyn would like to actually utilize this camper while it's not being used. Now, we talked about storage space, but I don't know if we'd ever use it for storage space. But she talked about a little prayer room for herself. I thought, hey, that's cool, that's a good idea. She's also said, well, when it's windy and cold and snowy and rainy and she doesn't want to cook in the house, she could cook down here in the camper. We could eat down here, do the dishes, and go back up to the house. And she doesn't have to get cold or wet or keep opening the door because we lose a lot of heat every time the door is open. Well, that's a good idea. We haven't absolutely confirmed that we're going to get a camper. She is looking for a camper, but it is curious why people seem to think they understand the needs of another individual. I would imagine that if I told you you have to live in a tiny house, you would say, no, I'm not going to live in a tiny house. So you are not an expert on tiny house living because you don't even want to live in a tiny house. Now, I know there's some people out there that will want to live in a tiny house, but the people who want me to add on to the tiny house clearly don't want to live in a tiny house. So how can these folks who don't want to live in a tiny house tell someone who lives in a tiny house how to live in a tiny house? The reason I am making this video is I want you to be aware of the Kruger-Dunning effect. I approach every situation that I ever come across as though I know nothing about it. Even if I feel like I've got some experience. Solar panels. Somebody asked the other day, can you help me install solar panels? And I said, no, I just don't know that much about it. You'd probably be better off with an expert who's got the schooling and the education and has actually done it. That way, if he runs into a problem or if I run into a problem, he can resolve the problem. I wouldn't be able to resolve it. So I would suggest, before telling someone else how to live their life, that you actually live it. So if you'll click this up next box, take you to a video where I was talking about being banned from canning food. So if I can inspire you to live your life instead of someone else's, so you can live your dreams. Thanks for watching.